Position.
Before
You mean they've locked you in the office?
Yep. They finally found the lock on the outside, and everything turned peachy. So, ladies and gentlemen, so happy to have you here. You're seeing 4 people in front of you. I'll present myself and well, let's just start here. I'm Sandström. This is the International Hypnotists Guild. It was founded by me and Fredrrik is next to me. He'll wave a hand and you'll notice which one it is. So we started this because we're working complementary with hypnosis in Sweden, which means there are 2 sides. There are people who, from the beginning, there was just one society only for people who also were under a protected title, working in healthcare, and that was all. So we decided it's needed a meeting place for people who also do stage hypnosis, who also do therapy, people who are taking a weekend training and just want to help some people with a phobia, or people who are proficient in other techniques and would like to add hypnosis or conscientiousness about hypnotic language to what they're doing. So we record, we collect, we spread, and we hope you will too. And we hope that, and if one of you walks away from here saying, I realized something, and that helps you or helps somebody around you, then, that's it. Deal done. We're happy. With that said, Fredrrik, why don't you present yourself?
Yeah, so I've been working as a hypnotist for, I think, 20 years now. And as Jonathan, I have a background in stage hypnosis. I used to be a magician, but I got bored of doing magic, short story. But I saw a hypnotist, and in Sweden, we're not used to see stage hypnosis. It's very rare in Sweden. So I saw this stage hypnotist, and I thought, this is what I want to do. And then I learned, this is way back, so it was pre-YouTube. But I had some old books. I took some trainings I found, and I started doing stage hypnosis. And then also I started helping clients, and I looked for something to combine hypnosis with to help people. And I found, or actually I saw Richard Bandler, a co-creator of NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, doing what is called a fast phobia cure, helping a client with a phobia in a few minutes. And I thought, I have to learn this too. So now with my clients, I usually combine hypnosis with NLP. But stage hypnosis is my background.
Yep. And so I ran into Fredrrik, and I was doing music, touring as a musician. We were doing a show. We had a colleague between us and a knife-throwing crazy magician. And he said, you should meet Fredrrik. He knows hypnosis. Why? And he's like, well, it's fun. And I'm like, why do you want hypnosis? We're standing in a bar having brandy for his new son, Melvin, at the time. And Fredrrik goes, well, you can fix phobias. So there we are, the phobia cure. I call my wife because she had a shark phobia at the time. And it was so bad that when we were swimming with our kids in the ocean at one point, she became so scared that she believed there was a shark that she, for a moment, almost forgot that she had our daughter with her. And she's like, I got to do something about this. So when I said, I'm in a bar, darling, she said, I know. Yeah, but I'm with a hypnotist. Okay. What can he do? Well, he says he can fix your shark phobia. Wonderful. I'll take it, she says. And I look at Fredrrik and I say, how many sessions? Because I have this old school thinking of, 20 sessions and lying down on a couch. And he goes, I don't know, 20 minutes. Deal done. She comes back, shark's gone, and I get interested. So I wanted to learn it. So I learned it from Fredrrik, and then I started using it on stage first in the music shows, telling the band, do you want a standing ovation? Look at this. It's pretty cool. And then you can plant that and get people to stand up. And then you can make the talk between the songs more mesmerizing and people storytelling, and it all grew. And then I did NLP, and Fredrrik said, you can use this for therapy. So I started trying therapy. I realized a concert is therapy for 50 to 5,000 people, and therapy is a concert for one. So I started getting interested. And then I came to a point where it didn't work because the hypnosis and the NLP weren't enough. So I found tapping, and that's a wordless method of curing stuff and phobias and everything. And then I found havening techniques, which is another one which a lot of you people here know, both tapping and havening. So I'm a havening trainer, I'm a tapping trainer. And that's how we ran into beautiful people like Judith Simon Prager, for example, because I was working with Gunilla in the Peaceful Heart Network, using mainly tapping and havening to help people in Rwanda after the genocide, Congo child soldiers, people in the refugee camp in Lesbos. And we traveled all over, and we've had astounding success with that. And then it all came full circle for me. And I have to say this, Judith, it became full circle because we were doing the tapping and havening, helping people where we can't speak that much. And then we ran into this verbal first aid, which basically is hypnosis and NLP, but only what you need, just enough to not do any harm. and that's where you popped onto the radar, and we took you to Sweden, and we love you.
Well,
and we gave you back to your husband, and that's fine.
Yes, well, but I've taken you with me here in my heart all the time.
Thanks. Yeah. And so verbal first aid, we're going to ask you to speak about verbal first aid. And we're going to ask you, Jonathan, to speak about stage hypnosis, because we have this full circle, because Fredrrik and I also do a training in speed inductions, which basically is lots of fun in stage hypnosis, because it's spectacular and fast, but also because it allows people to understand very fast what the difference is between being and not being in a trance, and not getting bored working with clients doing slow inductions. So we're going to look at the extremes of hypnosis, and it's kind of free, the format. So we haven't really decided who does what.
No, I also did a training for you, Jonathan, a few years ago.
Yes.
I don't remember how many years, but you're kind of
Lots.
a hero. Yeah, lots of years.
Lots
You're kind of a
of
hero. I read the book. One of the book I read, not when I started out, but later was, is it called Deeper and Deeper? About stage hypnosis. And there you talked about being the hypnotist.
Be the hypnotist, yeah.
The hypnotist, right. Which is what
Yeah,
I call myself since then.
the concept is that if you believe you're the hypnotist, they believe you're the hypnotist, and that makes you the hypnotist. It's very religious.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it was in this book as well, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that you said that the most hypnotic word is the word hypnosis. Am I correct about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I say that in all my books. I'm very repetitive.
Yeah.
You know,
that helps with hypnosis.
When you want to use it in hospitals, especially here in the United States, you really can't say hypnosis. You have to say guided imagery or something like that, because they're afraid they'll get sued. It seems like you're going to just go abracadabra and do horrible things. So, you know, hypnosis is both exciting and frightening. It's a very powerful word. And there was a nurse once. Can I tell a quick story?
Yeah.
There was a nurse who worked on helicopters between the war in Afghanistan, taking wounded people to the hospitals in Germany. They'd fly them out, and the nurse was working, and she'd read the book, The Worst Is Over, and she'd talk to me. And so she was using that language to the people to the victims she was flying. And the people she brought in seemed to do better than the other people who were brought in with nobody using magical words. And so they asked her what she did, and she said, well, I use this hypnosis, and they censured her. I mean, it was horrifying. It works, and they said no. So she had to, you know, say, well, guided imagery, I just have them imagine that they're feeling better and that their blood is, you know, they can stop their bleeding and all the things that we know can happen. But as you say, Jonathan, it's a very powerful word, but it's also a word that signifies to so many people that you have power over someone else. And that's not what you're doing. You're not using your power over someone else. You're using their own unconscious mind to help them heal. It's so different and beautiful.
So here's the deal. what we're meeting with here is the two extremes. The stage hypnosis, where you need people to believe that there is a power and that there is hypnosis, and the doing work in therapy hypnosis, where it might be in a situation where it's the opposite. It's still hypnosis. And this is what we like about it. We like comparing these things, bringing them together, and just finding out what are the useful components and how do we use them, right? I see a frown on Jonathan.
No, I'm not frowning. I'm not frowning. I'm just.
It's just his beard and mustache hides his mouth. That's all.
Interesting.
Yeah,
interesting.
But that's the thing. And so this community here, I
can't say that I share absolutely all the beliefs that have been said.
No, and
that's
here's
okay.
the thing. That's fine. So the thing is that since it's two different worlds, it's two different prerequisites. What are we trying to achieve? So the data points are there are laws against hypnosis when it comes to healthcare and when it comes to stuff. And that law, whatever you believe, there's still that law. And the reason some people are here today, correct me if I'm wrong, peeps here, if you can just write in the chat, where in the world you are and the reason you're here, right? So where in the world you are and the reason you're here. Just write that in the chat so that we get a little of this. Because some people I know sent us some emails and said they were curious, how do I use, what's possible to do with hypnosis? How big is it? You know, how long is a string? What can be done with it? Can you make people levitate? Can you amputate legs? Can you make them believe there's somebody else? Can they eat onions like apples? And that's one thing. And some people are here because they're using therapy like havening or tapping or NLP and something else, and they want to understand how to not do harm with words. So it's an extreme wide subject, which is why I love it. So what we thought we'd do, we just prepared some really short slides. And if it's okay with you, Judith and Jonathan, we'll just bring people through a very fast crash course, you know, so that we're on the same page, because some people maybe never heard about hypnosis and don't realize they're already hypnotized and all that stuff. And that's, you know, so just liability issues. We'll just explain it. All right. Shall I do some fast slides, Fredrrik?
Go for it.
Yeah, go.
I'll go for it. Okay. So here's the lowdown. Sorry. Okay. Words are symbols. Words are symbols. Symbols are something we have no idea what they mean to anybody, right? We don't know what a word is until it is proven. So think of a hat. Everybody, right now, think of a hat. Quickly. Okay. What does it look like? Imagine. Okay. Now, you will be so surprised because I will present the exact hat that you were thinking of. Am I correct?
No.
No, I'm not, because words are symbols. Okay. So what does that mean? It means if I tell somebody, calm down, or this is just going to hurt a bit, or I am the hypnotist, what that means is something it means to them, which depends on their whole life experience, which I have no idea about. Now, the state of hypnosis or the state of trance, agree or not, this is at least our take on it, it's attention. What are you focusing on? So what are you focusing on, and how unaware are you about everything else? So an example of a trance could be being very focused on something like, for example, this guy. Now, if you say that hypnosis is narrowing your consciousness onto one area, you could say that if you narrow your consciousness down to the area of the tip of this finger, if you truly have done that, you might be able to do surgery on this hand without feeling pain, because your attention is not there at all. So here's the deal. You already have a hypnotist. You are employing 24/7 an inner hypnotist that hypnotizes you into believing that you are you, and into believing that you're good at this, but not at that. It's too late for this, but on the other hand, you know, you're quite proud that you're whatever that is. So all your limiting beliefs are programmed by your inner hypnotist, and all your exaggerated megalomanian thoughts about yourself, which are untrue, are also programmed by your inner hypnotist, because words are symbols. So here's the trick to a long and happy life. And with long, I mean, if you believe it's long, it's long. Look for words that create paintings in your mind that you like. Tell yourself 24/7, gee, I suck. And your inner hypnotist is programming you to feel like a person who sucks. And then there are people who tell themselves that they're great at everything and they become presidents, but that's a different story. Okay, so here we have limiting beliefs. What are they? Well, it's when you think, and this is from a hypnotic catastrophe emergency hypnosis for first aid training that we did in Bhutan for the soups, for the peace warriors of the king there. So limiting beliefs is what is possible. So whatever you believe is possible and whatever you believe is impossible. The way you think that will affect what happens when you let go of that arrow. And ask yourself about any limiting belief, what if it isn't so? And it could change the total outcome of the way you're programming yourself. This is a colleague of ours. Fredrrik, you want to take this one?
Yeah, that's Ulf, another Ulf. And he was like...
They're very popular.
Yeah, very popular. He was like 50 years when he started competing in something called static apnea, which basically means holding your breath underwater. So he was actually a little bit too old for this kind of sport. His lungs were actually a little bit too small, so he wasn't fit physically, but he used his mind. So I coached him, a colleague of mine coached him. He had what you in NLP called an anchor. So when he went underwater, and you always have a coach with you who checks that you do not pass out or die or anything else bad. Actually, if you pass out, you get disqualified from this strange sport. As soon as he went underwater, he got into a deep trance. He changed a little bit over the years how he did it, but one of the things he did was imagining that he was sitting on a mountaintop, watching a nice landscape and just feeling good. And actually, he was able to hold his breath for, do we have the numbers? I think it's 9 minutes and 11 seconds. Yeah. So basically, all the his competitors, they did this physical training. They tried to expand their lungs and everything. He just did the mental part and was able to do this. So when he talks about this, he says that he could stay in this trance for, I think, 6 minutes, and then he had to become crystal clear and hold his breath for the last remaining few minutes. So I think he won. Yeah, you see the medal there. I don't remember if it was gold or silver, but that's a pretty long time to hold your breath.
That's definitely
with
a long
basically hypnosis, self-hypnosis, mental training. He did some meditation and stuff like that, but he used only mental, not physical, but only mental techniques to be one of the best in the world.
Yep. And that's very cool. And so what we have here today, I've read through the notes, meanwhile, of all you people, what you want to do. And we're going to be touching a lot of that. This is not a crash course in how to do stuff. This is an introduction to get the wide scope, right? And what we have is 2 tracks. We have the track of entertainment, what's possible, where we have Jonathan, and who is our our go-to stage hypnotist all time. And then we have, when it comes to therapy, how can you think about it? And we have Judith, which is our go-to every day, all time. So if you just join us on this track, we will be passing through a few steps on the way, understanding a little bit of what hypnosis is in the wider sense, because we want you to have a big map. Big maps are nice. When they are big enough, they are actually the world. So here we go. Trance can come in many shapes and sizes and forms. There is no such thing as you are or aren't hypnotized. That's a very hard thing to prove. I don't know if you, the rest of you agree, but I'll just say stuff and you can just shoot me down later. So I would say that there is like a zillion different trance states, and there are 8 million versions of them, one per person. But there are some things you can measure. You can measure if people actually are anesthetized, if they can change their temperature, if they can hallucinate or not, negative or positive, if they are noticing time passing or not. A normal thing in many religions is to use trance. So in many religions, drums are used, and repetition is a way of going into a trance. So playing the drums and drumming together and breathing rhythmically and moving together is kind of inducing a trance state. And when it comes to the way you're doing tapping or havening, there's a trance quality to it. And when I do havening over the internet, I always ask people to shuckle, to move slightly from right to left, like this. You can just try it right now. Just put your hands together like you're rolling a pearl between them, and just go a little bit from side to side. And you'll see that if you do this just like for a minute or two, after a while, you're gonna be like, yeah, this feels good. And as soon as you have some kind of trance state, if it's a good trance, then you're going to feel good. But if you ask, for example, our colleague James Tripp in England, he calls a fear trance or a pain trance or an aggression trance, that's a toxic trance. That's a toxic tunnel where everything is confirmed to be bad instead of good. So there are different types of trances. But to give you a short background so that nobody else has to do it, it existed maybe 60,000 years in Asia. And then 1734, somebody brought it to Europe, and it was one of the first people known to bring it was Franz Anton Mesmer, and it was called magnetism. He believed there was a certain ether in the air, a fluid in which we could transport our consciousness and be in touch with each other, and that it had to do also with magnetic fields. And after that, Marquis de Puysegur, depending on whose history book you're reading, he called it artificial somnambulism. And at this time, they were doing a lot of experiments with spiritualism and moving of the mind outside the body. And there's a very exciting book by Lucy Lagerbielke, which I am creating a sound book of, where she actually did these experiments, 1890 and forward. And then somewhere around 1795, James Braid came along and he called it hypnosis. What do you say about that name, Fredrrik?
Well, actually, now we have in the slide here the Swedish name, but in English it's hypnosis. But it is from the Greek word hypnos, which means sleep. So James Braid actually changed his mind and wanted to change the name for this state to monoideism, which means one thought or one idea, because he thought, well, it's not sleep. But now we have this word, which I think is a good word if you're not Greek. But then in Greek, it's called hypnosis, I think.
Right. So just to swish through this so that we can get to our wonderful guests, extreme surgery, just to get an idea, how extreme surgery can you do with this? Well, allegedly 300 operations around 1845 by James Esdale. So amputations, fully possible according to history. I don't know, in history, nobody hears you scream, so we don't really know what happened, but I believe it's fully possible. I have assisted in an operation with a woman of 81 years old. She was allergic to anesthesia, and she wanted to pull out 7 front teeth, and she was afraid it was going to hurt like hell. So we did hypnosis in the dentist chair, and I assisted the operation, keeping her in trance, fishing trout in the fjords of Norway. She was 12 and I was joining her father, and she was telling me about it. So it lasted 40 minutes. And the day after, she came back for a control and she hadn't taken any painkillers. So it was a pretty fast recovery, according to the dentist. So this is all possible. And I think you've done a hand surgery operation too, Fredrrik, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. This woman who needed a hand surgery, so they were cutting like here, and she did not want. Actually, this is usually kind of painful surgery, because they had to cut off the blood flow to your hand, and she didn't want anesthesia or what is it called? Yeah, nothing of that sort. And she was actually used to do self-hypnosis, so I just assisted her, and she, for her, it were to imagine, as the same as with your client, to imagine being in another place. So she was at a beach, and I actually saw the surgeon, cutting through the hand and making removing bits of bones and stuff. So it looks kind of gross. But she was in this trance all the time. I kept her there. And actually at one time, her whole body kind of shook like this. And we had made up finger signals. So this finger, index finger was yes, and second finger was no, or something like that. So I asked her, is everything okay? Because her body moved like that. And I got a yes. And afterwards, I asked her, did you notice that your body moved? And she said, yeah, I noticed, but I didn't feel anything. So I think her body felt the pain, but it didn't reach her conscious mind. That's my interpretation of it, but I don't know.
Yep. So we're going to take the first step to one of our guests now, and we're moving over into how we want to just share some thoughts of how extreme can hypnosis be. Now, extreme is, again, a symbol. So whatever that is for you, right? And these are just some examples that we brought up the last time we did this in Swedish, examples of stuff that people usually do in stage hypnosis shows is have somebody eat an onion like an apple, or the hypnotist becomes invisible. Everybody's naked. You're super warm. You're super cold. You're undressing. You're redressing. You're in an anthill. Your neighbor stinks. So stuff like this, it's like, can that really happen? Can people do that? How extreme can it get? So what we're looking for is we're around the campfire of stage hypnotism, and we're bringing up Jonathan Chase to bring us some of the interesting anecdotes of life.
Sorry, do you want me to speak?
That's you.
Yeah.
Spit it out.
Spit it out. Spit it out. Okay, some of the things I am going to say would be indicative of some of the things that we've heard. It's what I believe. I don't teach anymore, so I don't care whether anybody else believes it. I have no intention of proving anything because it's my experience. I started hypnotizing people way back in the 1980s. And I've hypnotized, it was estimated once, I didn't do the maths, but it was estimated that I've hypnotized successfully over 70,000 people. Because when I very first started, I was hypnotizing 40, 50 people on stage, virtually every night. And then I hound it down because it just got mental, it just got too mad. I think hypnosis is purely the delivery and the acceptance of suggestion. That's it. That's what it is. Every human being can do that. Not all human beings are very good at it. It's a natural thing that that about 20% of people can achieve the mental state. Hypnosis happens when your subconscious process is entirely 100% dominant. So the only time you naturally experience something even close to hypnosis is like when you're in love and you do all those stupid things and say all those stupid things and then think afterwards, why the hell how did that happen? You know? So likewise, it's when you're angry. It's when you're very, very scared and frightened. It's got nothing to do with these moments of distraction like reading or writing or doing anything like that. I believe hypnosis involves two people, the hypnotist and the hypnotee. If you haven't got two people, you haven't got a hypnosis. And I did a TED talk called How to Talk Yourself Into Anything. So I believe 100% in self-suggestion. That isn't hypnosis. That requires somebody else. I think, I believe, you know. Just to correct one little thing that really knocks me is that La Fontaine, the human magnetist that James Braid went to see in Manchester, called it hypnosis in his publicity. James Braid stole the word. He didn't, you know, but that's
yeah, you're correct. He popularized
we'll argue that. We'll argue that. You know?
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah,
but La Fontaine came up with the word. You know,
true.
And it's a brilliant word because it's given everybody in the Western world and most people throughout the world the one image that happens in people's heads. We did a thing called Hypnosis Installed. It's a DVD training thing. And Tim Box went out into Camden Lock in London and asked complete strangers who just shoved a microphone under their nose and said, what's hypnosis? And they all basically said the same thing. It's mind control from one person over another. And it is 100%. Absolutely. If you hypnotize somebody and walk away, do you know what's going to happen? Nothing. Absolutely zero, zilch. They will sit there till they get bored and then they'll do something else. Yeah. That's my opinion. Yeah. So somebody has to be in control of the conversation. Somebody has to, anybody who's hypnotized somebody to what on stage we call a somnambulistic, a sleepwalking state, knows and understands that they won't stay there if that state isn't managed. You have to, that's why we are constantly 1, 2, open your eyes, sleep. 1, 2, open your eyes, sleep. We are maintaining their condition. That's why we're doing it. It looks bloody good to the audience as well. It makes us look special. But all we are doing is panicking because Fredrrik knows and I know that in a 2-hour show, people come out of it and they just walk off. You know, they think, what the hell am I doing here? And they wander off, you know. It doesn't happen very often because you are constantly managing the condition and managing the state. On stage, when I bring people up, I don't care if they are scared and frightened. In fact, scared and frightened is the best place for them to be for me, because if they're scared and frightened, I know 100% they are processing the word hypnosis. And they are thinking, I'm going to lose control here. I'm going to be made to do whatever he wants me to do or whatever she wants me to do. And as soon as they start thinking that, the only way they can process that, because it isn't logical, it's not a logical problem, is to allow their subconscious process. There isn't a subconscious or a conscious mind, there's just two different processes. The only way that they can handle that is to allow their subconscious mind to take over, to become dominant. And as soon as that happens, I can take that over. Very simply, very easy, no fancy words or anything. In fact, if I say I'm a hypnotist and I see that moment look of fear, I know that I can reach forward, tap them on the forehead, go sleep, and they will go into what they think is hypnosis every single time. Yeah. If I don't get that look of fear, if I get the look of inquiry, and sort of, yeah, I think I won't play with that person because they're going to be hard. They're going to take effort to get into that state. And in a stage situation, I don't want to work hard, you know. One-to-one, different, because you can manipulate the situation a lot easier, yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit of what is, because I don't know if everyone's seen any kind of stage hypnosis. I know I hadn't.
Most therapists haven't.
No. So can you
but they go on the internet telling you how bad you are.
But can you tell us a little bit about the most strange things that are possible or extreme, as this is called, extreme hypnosis, that is possible to do? Because you have like how many decades of experience from stage hypnosis?
Anything.
Yeah, but yeah, I know.
How big is your imagination?
Give us examples.
If I hypnotize somebody and tell them they can fly, they will fly. Not very far and not for very long, but they will fly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've seen video of me, you know that I have given thousands of onions to thousands of people, and I've never had anybody react negatively because they think they're eating fruit, you know? And just think how powerful you... Look, the things we do on stage, there are 5 senses. We can affect those senses only in 2 ways for each sense. We can add something to it that isn't there, or we can take something away that is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can make you see anything we want within the realms of your imagination. Anything. I mean, absolutely anything. I've had people looking at their intestines. Yeah, somebody upset me once and I said, by the way, your belly's just split open, your intestines are going everywhere. And he was picking it up and going, what am I going to do with all this? Yeah. Now, the thing is, you are limited only by the person's imaginations. But I do hear a lot of rubbish on this score, on this level. If you tell somebody their hand is freezing, it will not freeze. Yeah? They may believe it's freezing. They may believe that they can't feel it. But you know, and I know, when you're doing hypnoamnesia and hypno everything else, we're not taking anything away, and we can only lightly affect them physiologically. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can say, by the way, when I wake you this time, that toothache is gone. Yeah. The toothache's gone. The tooth is still rotten. It still needs removing. It still needs work. It still needs a dentist. Yeah. But they'll quite happily go round until they die of an infected tooth. But that's the power of the imagination. So when you say, what can we do on stage? Well, anything within the realms of decency, taste, the actual physical structure of where you're working and what they can do, you know. But yeah, like I said, if I want somebody to levitate, they will believe they're levitating. Yeah.
And it looks like they are.
Yeah, and they will lift both feet off the floor.
Yeah, I know. But have you done the eating an onion and thinking it's an apple? I've never done it because when
thousands of times, thousands and thousands and thousands of times. It's on my video from Vegas.
Yeah, I know. But what is fascinating is that their eyes don't tear. So that is a physical response because they think they're eating an apple, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So because if you eat an onion,
you can control tear ducts.
Yeah.
You can control what you can control. Look.
Yeah. And speaking of that,
I think you could hypnotize somebody and tell them their heart's stopped. And I think with the right person at the right time in the right place, their heart would stop. But who on earth is ever going to experiment that?
No, that's not a good experiment.
You know,
but
I mean,
but okay, Jonathan, this is so interesting. And speaking of, you can stop your tears from coming. Judith, isn't it possible to stop blood bleeding?
Absolutely. That's what we train first responders in verbal first. It's called verbal first aid. We train first responders that when they come upon a person, let me just put it this way: in an emergency, people go into what we call an altered state. There's no hypnotist there involved in their losing their ability to be thinking clearly. You can always tell. There's all the signs of it. Their eyelids flutter. They are not present. They go into an altered state when people are panicked, frightened, in pain, hurt. They're in that state. So when you talk to them, you are talking to their autonomic nervous system. You are talking to their unconscious mind that runs their autonomic nervous system. And then everybody becomes a hypnotist. That's what's so interesting. And it's really important for everybody listening to this to know that what you say at such a time becomes something like a hypnotic command. And yes, Fredrrik, you can say stop your bleeding and save your blood. And if it's anything short of major major ventral or major bleeding, you can have them stop the bleeding. They will do that. And it's just wonderful that you can, if you say the right thing, you give them the opportunity to begin the inner healing. There's a paragraph that was part of an experiment in the 70s. And this is what we tell first responders to say: the worst is over. We're taking you to the hospital. Everything is being made ready. Let your body concentrate on repairing itself and feeling secure. Then they would say to the person who is in this panic state, who is in an altered state, let your heart, your blood vessels, everything bring themselves into a state of preserving your life. Bleed just enough so that as to cleanse the wound, and then let the blood vessels close down so that your life is preserved. Your body weight, your body heat, everything is being maintained. Things are being made ready in the hospital for you. We are getting there quickly and safely as possible. The worst is over. And that's what and when they said that, the paramedics who said that brought in people in better condition than the people who didn't. So it was really important to know. Did you want to say something else? No, I thought I saw you popping up.
I think, Judith, maybe your microphone is scratching. It may be your microphone that makes.
All right. I should have put it better.
This is better. Yeah.
I should have put it better.
So actually, you're saying the same as Jonathan was saying that. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're scared or as if you are wounded, you're in a kind of a trance, and then you're open to suggestion.
That's right.
Is that correct?
And so what we want to say in verbal first aid, we train people to say what they want to have happen, not what they don't. To say, stop your bleeding and save your blood. We say, your body knows how to heal itself. I had one woman who knew the whole protocol and actually came upon an accident and said the right things. Then later on, she was with a person who was dying, and she was in a room full of people who were sitting there just supporting the woman who was in the process of leaving life. And she said, I didn't know what to say, but everybody was upset and not knowing how to deal with it. And then I started to use the verbal first aid protocol, like your body knows what to do. You can just relax into it and let your body's wisdom take over. And she started saying those things, and everybody in the room calmed down, and the woman made this peaceful transition. We want to say, when a parent says to a child, don't run, you'll fall. And then the child runs and falls. And then the parent says, I told you you'll fall. Yes, that's what happened. You told the child they'll fall. What did they hear? Fall. The example we always give is, grandpa's walking across the room and he grabs his heart. He's having a pain, grabs his heart, falls down. And granddaughter, who loves him so much, goes, Grandpa, don't die. What does he hear? Die. See, when you say don't, that can't be heard. All he hears is die. And he thinks, could I die? Is that any good for his situation? It is not. So instead you say, we're calling 911. They know just what to do. They're on the way. Whatever it is you say that allows the person to move, to change the trajectory from this bad or worse to things are getting better. And so verbal first aid does that process. And it's so small. It doesn't have to be big. The one, Alpha's heard this story a million times, but it's a favorite of mine. A little girl and a mother were in a car crash, and the paramedics came, and they extracted the mother from the car. That was easy, but the child, who wasn't injured very much, was in the side of the car that the door was crashed into, so they couldn't extract her so quickly. And the firefighter, who had read The Worst Is Over the night before, said he would ordinarily have yelled, get the jaws of life, which is what they call to break open the car. And instead, he said, he reached in his hand through the window and touched the little girl's knee. And he said, I'm a daddy like your daddy, and I'm going to take care of you as if you were my little girl. And he said, all the crying stopped. Everything got quiet. The rescue went beautifully. So he said, verbal first aid is great. And I said, you don't even know what you did. Because now when she remembers this, she doesn't remember this as the worst thing that ever happened to her. She remembers this as a time of rescue and maybe even a time of her own courage. So maybe you help prevent a trauma. So she doesn't have to come into a psychologist's office later on and say, I'm always frightened about riding in cars. No more, because it's no longer the worst thing that ever happened to her. It's a time of rescue. So he said 3 simple things. I'm a daddy like your daddy. I can, I'm going to take care of you as if you were my little girl. 2 things. And it changed the present and the future. So what we teach is, because these people are in altered states, because people who are frightened or in pain or panicked are so, it's what Jonathan said when he says hypnosis, he can see in the eyes that they're already going into it. Yes. And in a time of crisis, that's what happens. People slip into an altered state, which allows you entree, but it requires that to make a positive suggestion. It's very, very meaningful. And when the paramedics do it, then they write us letters and they say, oh, it's great, and this worked and that worked, and it does. So hypnosis is such a power, but it is part of the normal human experience. And that's what's so brilliant about it. And
I like to add to that, Judith. So
Yes.
I put up the slide here with your book, which I recommend warmly for everybody. And it's Verbal First Aid. Say what you want to have happen, not what you don't. And like Judith said, just some examples. The worst is over. You can feel safe here. I am listening. And we got a request for you to reread the phrase that Eric Byrne did for the ambulance drivers. Now, you're my friend, but let me just say, what I find is so interesting here is to hear both you, Jonathan, and Judith, because it's I mean, what we're talking about is the effect of suggestibility, the effect of words. We can debate what is the act of hypnosis and when it happens and all that, but that's not the point of interest. The point of interest is what can we actually change in another person depending on the word we choose. So if we can make somebody eat an onion without their eyes tearing, I mean, that's amazing. And the same way on the other end, we can make people stop bleeding because they feel safer, or because it's vasoconstriction, or because they're lowering their adrenaline and heartbeat. I have no idea, but I have, I've heard the story from so many places.
Yes, it's true.
So let's hear
And,
that phrase again.
Okay. The worst is over. We are taking you to the hospital. Everything is being made ready. So that's first to reassure them, we're here. I mean, the fact that somebody hears you, that you're not alone in this. It doesn't even have to be a paramedic. If somebody says, I'm right here is such a powerful thing to say to somebody who's frightened. I'm right here. You're not alone. You don't have to do this for yourself. Somebody else knows. That's really important. The worst is over. We're taking you to the hospital. Everything is being made ready. Then the suggestions to the body. Let your body concentrate on repairing itself and feeling secure. Let your heart, your blood vessels, everything bring themselves into a state of preserving your life. Bleed just enough so as to cleanse the wound, and let the blood vessels close down so that your life is preserved. Your body weight, your body heat, everything is being maintained. That's the suggestions to the body. And remember, they're in an altered state. So you're talking to the unconscious mind, you're talking to the autonomic nervous system. And then you finish with things are being made ready in the hospital for you. We are getting you there as quickly and safely as possible. The worst is over. And so that gives them a trajectory. We're taking care of you. It's not this bad or worse. It's not you have to take care of it yourself. We're taking care of you, and you can do these things as soon as you let your body know that it knows what to do.
So can I just say, a couple of things here, which I think is very super interesting and fun and jolly and everything. When I listened to you, Jonathan, and we did a webinar with you, especially about stage hypnosis and what it is like, from what I've read in the books and from what I've seen, and we did a show, me and Fredrrik, with stage hypnosis, and there is some experience. It's fun, it's playful, and it's built on the actual idea that people come up and have somebody tell them what to do, and they all of a sudden they can do these extreme things. And in some cases, it is mind-blowing, especially when it's post-hypnotic suggestions. They walk back to their seat, they get up, they laugh, stuff happens again and again. And in verbal first aid, it's the exact opposite. It's about empowering the individual to believe that they can control it themselves. Am I right, Judith?
Jonathan is shaking his head.
I love it when you shake your head. Let's go. Bring it out.
Well, somebody making the suggestion, Jonathan, somebody making the suggestion is the quote hypnotist. That's why I'm saying you have to be careful, because it becomes a hypnotic suggestion. If you say, oh my God, you're bleeding, look at that blood. Oh, I don't know what's going to happen to you. Or don't move him because his back may be broken and he'll be paralyzed for life. That's a hypnotic suggestion. A friend of mine named Jim had to have back surgery, and it was major. And the doctor said, we don't know if you'll be able to walk again. We'll do the best we can, which was stupid, but doctors sometimes say things that are not helpful. So Jim went into the surgery, and in the middle of he had about 50 people. Everybody loved Jim. They were all in the waiting room, and the doctor's working on Jim. And in the middle of it, he says, I just don't know if I can do this. And he walks out to where all the people are, all of Jim's friends. And he says, I don't know. And Jim's friends say, you have to save Jim. And he goes back in with better implements, and he saves Jim. And Jim comes out of it, and he's walking, and it's wonderful. And Jim is in depression. Why is he in depression? Because when he was under the anesthesia, he heard the doctor say, I don't think I can do this. And so what we had to do was put him in hypnosis, bring him through into the operation, and bring him all the way through it to when the doctor had completed it, and it was safe and it was done. So yes, it's often somebody else making the suggestion. I agree with you, Jonathan. It's not we do this ourselves thinking, oh, I'm brilliant and I'm whatever. It's somebody, it's the suggestion always, but so often how people process it and how you help them move it in the direction of recovery. And I'm always talking about healing is, that's what verbal first aid is about. You empower them to have a different program in their mind than the program that was full of fear. The program that, oh my gosh, I've ruined myself. My life is over. I've fallen off the roof and I may never walk again. That's what they think until somebody comes and says, we know what to do. But we've seen this before. I had a patient like this 2 months ago, and now he's out playing tennis. What you do is you give them a different picture. And so what you're doing is you're reprogramming the belief system of that fearful moment.
So I suspect it's time for Jonathan to to come in with a completely different view. And I love that. Let me just say, Doug O'Brien from New York, he is here, but he got tied up. So I don't know, Doug, if you're still here, if you just can say hello to people, because the idea was that you were going to share some stuff, but I understand that you're out of time.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. I didn't block it up on my calendar, and everything else filled up around it. So yes, I'm actually supposed to be on another call right now, but I just wanted to pipe in and say hi. But I love what Judith is saying, and I just wanted to tell a real quick story, if I might.
Sure.
I used to work in a hospital. I used to work doing pre-surgical hypnosis for a guy named Dr. Oz here in New York City before he had his own TV show. He was a well-respected cardiothoracic surgeon, and he started this thing called the Department of Complementary Medicine. His job there was basically, he was testing to see whether hypnosis, acupuncture, different alternative therapies would work in a hospital setting. So it was really kind of a let's find out, let's test it, let's check it out. Long story short, by the end of the process, about 6 years later, many things were no longer in the hospital, but hypnosis and massage both were still there, just so you know. But during that period of time, as I was doing pre-surgical hypnosis, I had to have an operation of my own. I had a hernia that developed when I was running a marathon. So I went to the doctor and he said, well, you have two options. I was hoping he was going to say one of them would be herbs and meditation, but he said, you have two options. You can do surgery now, or you can do surgery later. And so I said, oh, thanks, doc. That's very nice. So I figured as long as I had to have the operation, I would make it interesting. So I found a surgeon who was willing to do it without using any anesthesia, just using hypnosis. So I recorded a tape for myself that was on a loop, and the tape recorder, it was a tape, literally a tape recorder back then, mid 90s, would auto reverse. So I'd play it over and over again. And I went through this hernia operation without any anesthesia. And like Judith was saying, some of the suggestions were in there that I would have minimal bleeding, just enough to keep the wound clean. And, no pain, no discomfort. And that's basically what happened. The surgeons and the assistants were astonished. They'd never seen anything like this. They were just amazed, because usually it's a fairly bloody operation. They usually go through 4 or 5 of these pads that soak up the blood. Just use the one that they put down there originally at the outset of the operation. It was barely dirty, but they, there you go. So I can tell you for a fact, this does work, and there's plenty of evidence that this is the case. And I wish I could talk to you more about it all, but clearly you are in good hands with the folks that are here. So appreciate you letting me pipe in. I apologize for not being here longer.
That's cool, Doug. It's great that you took the time. And also just one word to people. If people are working with something else, they're working with havening or tapping or NLP or therapy or coaching or just teachers in school or whatever. If some of them are just saying, I'm curious how I could integrate more of a consciously hypnotic grammar into my communication, what is your advice to them?
My advice?
Yes.
My advice is yes. Call Ulf, call Fredrrik, call Judith. Yes, bring it on. Yeah, it's absolutely, yeah. But the truth of the matter is this stuff really does work, and the mind is an amazingly powerful thing. The power of placebo is also a kind of interesting thing. There's this very famous story. You probably all know about this person back in the 50s, a British doctor who was found out that he studied hypnosis, found out that you could remove warts with hypnosis. And so this person came in at like hundreds, millions of warts, like all over the body. And he went to the head surgeon and said, well, why don't we use hypnosis and take them away? And he said, yeah, you do it. So he said, all right. So he for whatever reason, decided to do just one half, just did the right side, and the warts all went away. And then he went back later and he said, hey, look what I did. And they said, oh, that's impossible. Those aren't warts. Those are, and he had this other medical condition that, nobody had ever removed those with hypnosis before. So he said, you can't do that. And the person that said you can't do that was like an esteemed, not just the head of the hospital, but he was like the head of medicine in the UK at the time. He was like this guy that's enshrined in the halls there now. So it's like his word carried weight. And after that was over, the guy said, well, I'm going to do it with the left half and do it over anyway. And it didn't work the second time because the guy didn't believe it himself as much. I mean, that's my interpretation. I'm not sure exactly why, but that certainly makes sense that the kind of nocebo, plan took place there, that he was at that point unable to remove the warts, which is a fascinating story. This is documented, by the way. You can find photographs of this. This is not just a story. This is fact.
Thanks so much, Doug. Excellent story. Thanks for sharing.
Hi, Doug.
Hi, Judith.
We would love you to stay the whole time, but I know you can't. So thanks for having this time for us. Next time we'll talk more.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Stay great. Thanks. So
Bye-bye.
I just like to tie back into that now with
But Alf, can I confirm? Go ahead.
Absolutely. I just want to say one thing. I just want to tie this back to the fact that you were talking when Fredrrik and Jonathan were talking in the beginning, and Jonathan, you said, be the hypnotist. That's basically what, for me, Doug says didn't happen. He was the hypnotist, and then he lost the confidence to be it, and no longer could hypnotize the warts. Sorry, Judith.
No, I just wanted to confirm what Doug was saying about the hospitals, because I did it was the first ever, as far as I know, many years ago for Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, which is a major medical center in Los Angeles. I did before, during, and after surgery. It was the first one that was a CD for guided imagery before, during, and after surgery. And they did a study in the hospital with cardio surgeon did the study, and he found out that people who listened to before, during, and the during was like all the way through, and every touch is a healing touch. You can feel it, and all the imagery that we did and everything about how it works out, and you can stop your bleeding and all that. And then the last one is waking up in the recovery room. As you awaken, as if from a peaceful sleep, all of your organs start, acting again. So the result of the study was that 99% of the people had fewer requests for pain medication and fewer requests for sleeping medication, and the healing was wonderful. So they apparently still use those CDs or whatever, the program in the hospital for surgery. So yes, it very much affects the body and how we perceive the body, the suggestions.
Thank you. So Jonathan, do you have any comments on all this or recommendations from a stage hypnotist?
You don't have that many hours. Yeah, I think it's important that we have a look at why this happens. Yeah, you've got two processes. You've got the subconscious processes, which is entirely 100% reactive. Yeah, something happens, the subconscious mind reacts to it. The response of the conscious mind requires it to figure things out and requires it to look at it and look at the logical side. If you've got a brick coming towards your head at 500 miles an hour, your conscious mind does not have time to look at the trajectory, the speed, whether you know, whether putting your head forward or back or putting your hand up would be a good thing to do. So it gives over complete control to your subconscious mind that just reacts. Yeah. In an accident where somebody is injured, there's no logical sense in being there. Believe me, I was in a fatal car accident in '85. It wasn't my fatality, it was the other guys, but you know, it happens so quickly, and you just respond to it, you know. And it was only when I got in the ambulance and they actually said, well, you've got a lot of bruising in your chest, that I actually felt any pain, because your subconscious mind will cut that off, you know, completely. Absolutely. I was a nurse in an orthopedic hospital for 5 years. So I've seen a lot of people in traumatic conditions. I used to work in A&E. I started off working in A&E, accident and emergency. And I have seen things and been involved with things that a lot of people talk about they've never experienced. It's good to hear Joanne, you know, say that you've actually worked in a hospital, you know, and worked with patients, because a lot of the stuff that you've read is written by people who've never had that experience. So they you know what I mean, Joanne? They don't know whether it works or not. But that's what happens. When people get into that situation where the subconscious mind takes over, then somebody else can influence them, you know. Look, hypnotists are snake oil salesmen, and it's damn good snake oil, you know. Somebody said to me, what's in a bottle of water from Lourdes? Yeah, is it the spirit of Christ or the spirit of the Mother Mary? Or no, it's water and a hell of a lot of belief. And does that make it any less likely to work? No, far from it. We're a bucket of beliefs and behaviors. That's what we are. And what hypnotists do, we take over the beliefs and we change them. I didn't get my program produced by Channel 4 for saying, I don't care what you believe, I can change that. And if I can hypnotize you, I don't care how deeply held a religious belief is, you can change that very easily, very, very simply. I have done that on stage. Fredrrik, you know, the beauty of being a stage hypnotist is, providing we don't step out of the bounds of what the audience finds acceptable, we can virtually do anything we want.
Yeah.
And we can experiment. We can take it right to the edge. Yeah. Yeah. I have worked Army junior ranks bases. Now, a junior ranks mess, they call them grunts because they're not intelligent enough to do anything except put out at the front. When the bullet hits them, they go, ugh! That's why they're called grunts. Yeah. And they're not the brightest sparks in the pack. I've done shows in prisons, you know, with really devious people. And I've worked all sorts of situations like that. I've worked universities. We don't do schools in the United Kingdom like the Americans do, you know, but we're not kids entertainers. So, but I think it's very important to know that it really is that position of being the hypnotist in their head, you know. It's partially having one of these, yeah, but it's also partially in knowing how to use the damn thing, you know. And before the therapists go, start making the signs of a cross, I have had more work out of taking this out of my pocket, more belief that I can hypnotize people out of taking this out of my pocket than any business card I ever had made. Yeah. Because people will say, oh, you're a hypnotist. And you go, yeah, I am actually. And I go,
Yeah.
oh.
And you're using the
every time,
stereotype. Yeah.
not some of the time, every time. Yeah, because everybody in the Western world has got hypnosis in their head. I'll tell you what, I saw Sideshow Bob on The Simpsons hypnotize Bart. I saw Fred Flintstone hypnotized by a hypnotist, and he was wandering around, and Wilma accidentally hypnotized Fred. Squarepants SpongeBob or whatever his name.
Yeah. Squarepants.
There's hypnosis in that, you know. Hypnosis, that sort of mind control, is in the zeitgeist of the Western world.
Yeah.
Even people who have never, ever seen it, never heard a word about it, if you said to them, what's hypnosis, they will tell you. They have a pattern in their head. And if you say the word hypnosis, the first thing I would teach paramedics to say is, right, I'm a hypnotist and then go through very similar language. It wouldn't be the same, obviously, because we're British, you know. We would phrase it.
Could I jump in on that, Jonathan?
Advice.
Yeah.
Phrase
it differently, but we say the same words. But I would add to that, I'm a hypnotist and, you know.
Actually, Jack Gibson, who wrote another book on hypnosis, that's exactly what he says too. He says when people are in front of surgery, he did also loads of surgeries, I think 2,000 using hypnosis. He said that if you tell people, I can hypnotize you and you have to listen to me and do exactly what I say, and you will not feel pain and it will be fine. And he said, the more afraid they are, the more they will comply. So, I mean, that concurs completely. Can I just add, I just want to say a little short thing here about clean, because we promised people that, okay? So basically, one of the things that I use, because the question came up, how to integrate hypnotic language, like Doug says, or like Judith says, and Jonathan too, into when you're doing therapy. For me, this is the absolutely essence, apart from verbal first aid in an emergency, clean language by David Grove, who came from hypnosis and NLP and constructed a way of conversationally allowing the client or the patient or whoever it is to go into a trance of their own world and not disturb it with anything from the outside. So it's a very specific trance. It's a therapeutic trance, but it works incredibly well in keeping safety. It concurs with verbal first aid, and it actually, in a way, turns the patient or the client into the hypnotist of themselves with the aid of the questions asked. So it's a set of 12 questions, but it's the principles for me that have allowed me to very easily create safe sessions when it comes to people who are extremely traumatized and go into a complete reaction if they just close their eyes or anything else, because you have full control.
Please.
Sorry?
Can I help here, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, Fredrrik knows this is in my books. The subconscious is a bright 9-year-old child.
Trust me, I'm the patient.
Yeah, that's the one. Trust me, I'm the patient.
The subconscious is a bright 9-year-old child. Now, if you want to get into the neurology and you say the subconscious is pretty much the limbic system, the paleo-mammalian brain that's at the top of the spine. We won't get into too much detail because I can go on about that. But if we look, the subconscious is pretty well set by the time you're 9.5, and your imagination doesn't expand past that, your subconscious mind. Think this way. Hypnotic language, I'm sorry, but it makes me go, ugh! Right? Because all the respondent has to do is understand clearly what you expect to happen. If you want it to happen, expect it to happen. Really see it happening. Know and understand it can happen, because you can have the most wonderful words in the world to stop somebody feeling that pain. But if for 1 second you think it won't work, it won't work. Yeah.
I'd like to just say to that, I agree with you from the perspective. Wait, can I just say something?
What you say,
Jonathan,
but how you say it.
exactly. But here's the deal. Yes, in stage hypnosis, but when it comes to using it for therapy, it's actually quite different. Because
absolutely no difference in the world.
But wait a minute. I'm not trying to make somebody do something or make something happen. It's the opposite. It's the exact opposite.
No. You're thinking like a therapist. You're thinking, I've got to
I'm thinking like a hypnotist, Jonathan.
I've got to be nice to
Jonathan, I'm thinking like a hypnotist. I've been doing hypnosis very long.
Oh, yeah. Works for you, doesn't it?
Yeah. And so, I mean, like I said, there's probably 8 million kinds of hypnosis.
Listen to me very carefully. You believe the way you do it works, so it does.
Yeah, but isn't that...
however,
but isn't that what it's all about?
The same.
So can I tell 2 stories?
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. So one of them is I gave a talk at the International Intergenerational Trauma in Northern Ireland. And it was Gabor Mate gave a talk, and Stephen Porges, and all the major people in trauma gave a talk, and they had me do one too. And they were talking about intergenerational trauma, people who have, it's not even really theirs. They're carrying it around from however it's carried through genetics, whatever, but people have a history of their being that they're not aware of. And I had a psychologist come, he was a psychologist from South America, and he came and he said, I have this existential fear. I don't know where it comes from. When things start peaking to be happening for me, I get this fear. He said, I've had drug dealers put a gun to my head. It is not that kind of fear. It's existential. I don't even know what to do with it. So I put him into trance, and we started going back in his history, trying to figure out where this came from. And finally, I took him back to the womb. And we can do this. It's such a wonderful thing. You can go to past life, but I just took him back to the womb, and I said, do you remember being in the womb? What did it feel like? Tell me what it felt like. Oh, it was comfortable. It was dark. It was warm. I was happy. And was your mother happy? She was happy to have a baby inside her, and blah, blah, blah. And then I said, and when she was ready to give birth to you, how excited and how did she feel? And his face got white. And he said, oh my God, his mother died in childbirth after she had the next child, and his grandmother died in childbirth. And I said, so if she were going to give birth to you? And he said she could die. And I said, is that the feeling that you're having? And he said, yes. And I said, is it yours? And he said, no, it's hers. And I said, are you willing to give it back to her? Would it be all right if she just said, I don't want you carrying it around anymore? And he took a few moments and he said, yes. She doesn't want me carrying that feeling around. I said, are you willing to let it go? And he said, yes. And he came up from trance, and he's a psychologist, and he was stunned that in the suggestion that to recognize that he had been programmed one way from historically, however we get intergenerational trauma, and now he could be free of it. So it was major. And I just want to say, we're giving suggestions for healing. It's the most important healing technique you can use. Oh, I want to do one more thing as long as I got the floor. Let me do this because I want to do what I think is the best tapping story in the history of the world. Are you ready?
We're ready for it.
All right. I had a coal miner. The man was a coal miner, just mined coal in Wyoming, which is a very Wild West kind of city in the United States. And he called me and he said, the other day, my 2-year-old came walking in and I yelled at her and she just blanched, and I don't want to be that kind of father. Can you help me? And I said, okay. And he said, my father was a drug addict, and he was in different prisons, and we had to move from one prison to the next, from one city to the next, in the different prisons. And my mother was a drug addict, and we kept moving to new schools. And my mother never did the laundry because she was busy on drugs. And my clothes smelled of stale cigarettes from her smoking all the time. And the kids in school called me stinky. And I got into fights everywhere I went. I just had to get into fights all the time because people were calling me names, and I was being bullied. So so I realized now that maybe that's why I'm angry, and I shouldn't be angry at my 2-year-old. That's horrible. And I don't want to be that kind of father. And I thought, oh, I'd love to help him not be that kind of father. So I was happy to help. But then he said, oh, wait, I forgot to tell you, I have OCD. I count everything. If I'm making a turn signal in my car, it has to click 5 times or 10 times. It can't click 7 times. And when I brush my teeth, I count everything. And all of a sudden, and this is one of the things I want to say, sometimes trust when something comes to you. Sometimes trust when you have an inspiration. I said this thing to him that I would never have even thought of. And I said, how does it feel when you, and where do you feel it when I say to you, I am furious because I can't count on anyone or anything? And he said, oh my God, my chest feels tight. He couldn't count on anything, so he was counting everything. That was the only way his brain used to countermand this. So I said, okay, I'm going to tell you to do this crazy thing, just do as I say. And we started tapping the pattern that Ulf knows so well. Ulf and Gunilla, God bless them, they do this wonderful tapping thing. And he was doing the tapping, and I had him also say, I am furious because I can't count on anything or anyone. And when he finished, I said, how does your chest feel? And he said, my chest is wide open. And I was so blown away that I just said, great, goodbye. And then I thought, oh, he came to me for anger, and we just did that. I failed, blah, blah. I called the wife the next day or 2 days later, and she said, oh, Judith, the OCD is gone. He doesn't count anything. Well, first of all, talk to any psychologist you ever met. You can't cure OCD in 20 minutes on the telephone. And this was done on the telephone, but it was gone, and it's still gone. This was years ago. Anyway, 2 years later, and I thought I had failed because he had come for anger, and I had made his OCD go away. 2 years later, he called and he said, I have to take a written test, and you saved my life before, so will you help me now? And I said, well, I thought I failed because I didn't deal with your anger. And he said, oh no, I used to be talking with someone in conversation, and all of a sudden I started counting something and I forgot what I was saying, and then I would get angry in defense. And he said, now that I don't have OCD anymore, I don't get angry so much. So what I want to tell you is, first of all, tapping is friggin' magic. I love it. But the second thing that I want to tell you is that you shouldn't judge yourself, because you never know the effect of what you're doing. Sometimes I had a man come to me I had a woman come to me who was a nurse, and she suddenly became panicked about bleeding, and she'd faint every time she saw blood. So she couldn't be a nurse. I hypnotized her, and she went home, and I didn't hear from her ever again. 2 years later, her husband called me and said, do you remember you helped my wife with the, and I said, did I help her? And he said, of course, that's why I'm calling you for me. So I just want you to know that you can't always tell how much good you're doing, but you should always be doing the good, and always trust, have some confidence that when you're giving good suggestions, the unconscious mind is listening. And that's my life and my work, and I wanted to tell those stories. So thank you for tapping.
Thank you. And so true, because I actually recognize both of these cases. I have many OCD clients, and also one who studied to be a nurse and was afraid of blood. So I recognize both of these cases. But that's true. You don't know how much good you do until you get the feedback. And for me personally, I usually don't ask for feedback, but 99% of my clients are from recommendations. So
that's good feedback.
So I know I'm doing good.
Yeah.
So Ulf, can you talk a little bit more about clean language? Because I think that's important, because when the clients, usually they have a metaphor, or they say I have this problem or this problem. So clean is basically about not contaminating their own metaphors or unconscious representations, I'd say.
Exactly. So, I mean, basically, David Grovey spent 25 years looking at people who are traumatized with post-traumatic stress. And what he looked at was that if you start talking to somebody and you're doing therapeutic intervention, anything you say can trigger them off in a new scheme of the brain. It can go to a new direction, and you don't want that. You want to be able to take care of whatever the issue is that you're dealing with right now. So the way the language is constructed, it sounds a bit silly because it's constructed specifically to make them aware of the meaning of their own words. So when somebody says, I have this eerie feeling, it feels really strange. A clean response would be, what kind of eerie is that eerie? Out of all the eries you have in your symbolic language understanding, which one is this eerie? And you would go from eerie to where is it in your body? Or what does eerie know about strange or whatever else you said? So you're all the time, the principle is very easy. You're always using the words of the client, and you're always leading them to reflect what they just said and what that actually means until you reach the metaphor. And when you reach the metaphor, then you can actually work with a metaphor instead of working with the actual issue. So they say this eerie that is stopping me in my life is actually like this big hole in my chest. So where in your chest is it? Well, it's kind of like over here. Okay, and what is it like? Well, it's like the kind of hole you have in, you know, when you get this tear in a rain jacket, so you can't really see it's a hole, but the water comes through. And now you're working with a metaphor instead. So I've been using it for over 10 years, and we've been teaching it as a safety protocol for those who are learning havening, for example, or tapping when they're doing emergency first aid, emotional first aid in refugee camps or something. And it's an extremely simple way of staying safe so that you don't unintentionally suggest something that could trigger a flashback in people who are very prone to flashbacks.
And also, I think if they use their metaphor, they say like it's a black hole in my chest, and you say, what's the size? Then you contaminate their metaphor with your language. And if you try this, the metaphor stops there because you've contaminated it. So if you use their language and the specific clean questions, they can expand on their metaphor, and then you can find something to do about it.
Well, basically what you're doing is you're eliminating the risk of flashbacks. So when we started integrating clean into sessions with people we were training, flashbacks, even the risk of a flashback went down to zero. Because with traumatized people, you have no idea what will trigger it. Absolutely none.
And then again, you have to know what to do with a flashback because it could happen anyway. So if you have that tapping and the havening, you know what to do. You're
good. So we were going to talk, I mean, the time is out and we've talked so much. I'd love to talk again with everybody. We did have something that we wanted to touch ground on, which is basically the extreme of hypnosis and how the CIA spent some money and time looking into it. This is from a document. I don't think we have enough evidence to say positively that hypnotism is a practical covert weapon, but we won't find out unless we study it. And there's lots of rumors and stuff and conspiracy theories about that, but there's also the movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats, which actually makes quite a lot of fun about that. And just to say that they did a lot of similar research in the USSR and Russia, where they looked into that, and they have some pretty good people working with techniques there as well. So having said that, we're not going to finish that line of thought this time, but
it's fascinating, isn't it? I've trained people from the United States, and they said that the Russians have got all these fantastic techniques that they were using every single week, and everybody knew all about it. And I've trained people from Russia who say exactly the same thing about America. And
that's the Cold War summed up.
This group, and we've got to be careful here. Let's face it, we're all in the same bloody religion. Some of us might be Catholics and some of us might be Protestants, but we're all in the same religion. But when we go outside of this religion, the general public know sod all about what we do. and they know nothing about it, and they've got an image of what hypnosis would be in that. And what we've got to be very, very careful of, not so much in Joe's situation when you're talking with paramedics and that, but what we've got to be very careful of is that everybody who has decided to come to see a hypnotist is already there.
That's right.
Because they've made that choice.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
true.
That's so true.
And we've got to be very, very careful of that, because
Yep.
if they believe what you do will work, and you believe what you do will work, it will work. There's no rules. You don't need any patterns or anything like that. I teach a thing called symbolism, where we actually don't even bother about their metaphor. We work with their symbols, and we don't even ask what the symbol is. That's clean.
Yeah, true, Jonathan. I've used that a lot, and it's clean.
But that's really clean, because we cut the language out, and they haven't even got to interpret what's happening in their head for you to give you a metaphor. Do you understand? But anyway, I've enjoyed it frantically, but that's the most important thing about hypnosis, is that if they believe and you believe, you get the result together.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, Judith. Some final words.
Sometimes people say I'm nervous about being put in hypnosis, but there has been a study that says that if you say calm down, you're asking them to move from an adrenaline state of nervousness to a state of different chemicals in their body. If you say instead, maybe you're not nervous, maybe you're excited. Excited is the very same adrenaline as nervous. And so you can translate it just using language. You can allow them to accept the hypnosis that way, to say, oh, maybe I am excited. Maybe that's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling something. Okay, let's get going on this. So just want to suggest that way. If any of your patients.
That's a therapeutic style. I agree with that. When you're working one-on-one with some on stage, if somebody said to me, and it's happened, and they've said to me over the microphone, oh, I feel a bit nervous, I say, it's okay. Once you're in there, you'll feel fine. You know, we both get the same result.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Sure, you get the same result.
But it's also, I mean, Jonathan, in all honesty, I mean, your situation is very specific, because you have the parameter of you and them on stage and an audience. I mean, there's several energies in action there. And when you're working therapeutically,
you can't even begin to imagine.
Oh, I can.
I mean, if you've done a stage show in a nice cabaret club where they've all come to see hypnosis, or a theatre, and they've all come to see I've worked what we call working men's clubs. There's not so many of them now, where everybody went out on a Friday and a Saturday night every week to the same place to have a drink, have a game of darts, play some games, bingo with and they didn't even know there was going to be a stage hypnotist on, and you would go out. I come from a coal mining community, and you would go out, go out to 250 men and their families and wives, and the kids were running about, and men were playing one-armed bandits, and people were getting served at the bar, and there was all that going on. And there's 250 guys sitting there going, go on then, entertain me. And you bloody well had to entertain. Not only did you have to entertain them, but you had to get them to come up on stage and help you. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a whole different kettle of fish. To be frank, working one-on-one in an office compared to that is so easy.
Well, yeah, it's. I would say it's different. Maybe
I would
not
say it's
easy,
different,
but
yeah.
different. Okay, guys. Okay, guys. This has been great.
Such a pleasure. Such
Say,
a pleasure.
Jonathan,
we love you to
say
bits.
hello
Jonathan,
to Jane
thanks
from
a
me and
lot.
Malena. Nice to see you, and
Judith.
thank you both, Judith,
Anybody?
Jonathan, dog who had to be just here for a short while.
I think I see something coming up in, during the next year as a fruit of this meeting. It will be doing stage therapeutic hypnosis.
Stage therapeutic hypnosis. Yeah.
Bring your
that we can
problems
agree
on stage. We'll do
I've never
surgery
done
too.
anything else.
Okay. It's been great. Thanks.
It's been great.
For
Thanks so
joining.
much. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you all for, and
Oh
Fredrrik
no,
for
not the
putting it
clock.
out.
Not that. Not the pendulum.
Oh, not the pendulum.